Welcome to today's Hangout on Air. Good morning, everyone, and good afternoon to anyone joining us from across the pond. My name is Nick Olson from Digi-Key Corporation. Just want to thank you for joining us once again. Today we'll be hanging out with Len Stoller from Silicon Labs. Together we will be discussing timing solutions for every application. If you have any questions during the Hangout, please tweet them using the hashtag DKHOA, and we will answer them at the end of the Hangout. And with that, I will turn it over to Len.
Hello, everyone. Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon, depending on where you're calling in from. Thanks for joining us this morning and talk a little bit about Silicon Labs and what we provide as far as IC solutions and timing, clocks, and oscillators. I'll spend a few minutes with an overview there, and then we'll talk about some of the tools. As a chip company, we feel that investment in making clock solutions very easy to implement is a very important part of our product line. So I'll give an informal demo of a couple of tools that we hope that you'll find helpful, and then, as Nick said, we'd take any questions that you might have. So our market focus, we started in the communications and the internet infrastructure, but we do have solutions that focus on embedded and consumer. So if you're using any kind of clocks or oscillators in your system, even crystals, Silicon Laboratories is a complete supplier of these products. And where we're different, because there are a lot of suppliers out there, so a few reasons you should look at Silicon Laboratories where we try to really focus and giving a complete solution is, first of all, giving very good performance. Whether you don't really need the greatest performance and you just need lower cost, or you need very low phase noise and phase jitter, we have products for that. And what we're also very good at is as PCBs and systems and applications are getting very, very complicated, where they're getting more and more complex clocking requirements, or just you need a lot of clocks, it's starting to affect reliability, BOM cost, PCB area. So we make our solutions very flexible so that you can still hit the specs that you need, all these different frequencies you might have to support, and to give you products that you can customize to your application with still very short lead times. And of course, none of this is great unless we have great partners like Digi-Key, hands-on technical support, stock common frequencies, or just design services if you need some recommendations on what you should be using. We know there are a lot of parts out there, and you might not have the time to look through everything and know all the nuances of every product that's out there. And it's very important to pick the right product, not only to hit your specifications, but also to get the lowest cost and the lowest BOM count you can. So we have a complete timing portfolio where we might be a little bit different, as Silicon Laboratories is very committed to both frequency control, which really means oscillators, and clocks and clock buffers. So the difference between a clock generator and an oscillator, I get asked this quite a bit, is an oscillator, you power it up and it provides one frequency at any given time. So canned oscillators, you can even think of a crystal as an oscillator, but in this case there may be an embedded crystal with some CMOS, and you power it up and it gives you a very reliable frequency output. Clock generators take one frequency and maybe generate a bunch of other frequencies. So if you need a lot of different frequencies on your PCB, for whatever application, a clock generator might be a better solution, because then you don't have to buy a lot of different oscillators to get all your clocks taken care of on your board. And so that's the difference between a clock generator and an oscillator. And buffers just make a bunch of copies of the same thing. So that can help you save money on your board. If you need a lot of copies of the same frequency, why buy a lot of oscillators or use a clock generator from that when you can just take a buffer with maybe an oscillator or an existing clock and then drive a lot of the same copies of the same thing. And this is common when you might have a lot of CPUs with the same reference frequency that's needed, or using an FPGA that requires a lot of clocks. Or maybe you have a bunch of PHYs on your board for whether it's USB or gigabit Ethernet or industrial Ethernet or CAN. You might need a bunch of the same frequencies, and you might even need them to be synchronized. So buffers are great for that. Moving up and down this pyramid, the cost knob really can change depending on whether you need ultra high performance and reliability, like in communication systems, RF and military, or maybe you're just trying to replace crystals in a consumer product and you want it to be more reliable. It's very important to make sure that you understand the specifications that you need so that you get the right product on your PCB. And you may use stuff from that's maybe our higher volume, lower cost MEMS oscillator as a crystal replacement, and maybe you only need one really high quality EXO somewhere else in your system. So we are a complete supplier. Your sourcing managers will like that. You could like that. We do bundled pricing and whatnot, and also bundled specifications. Just a quick introduction to some of the products that we do provide. So on the oscillator front, we have really three classes of product. We have crystal oscillators, and where we're different here is that we're very quick with customization. So if you need a very odd frequency of some kind, you don't have to wait for a crystal company to polish the crystal, hermetically seal it, test it, and this often can result in very long lead times, which if you have a problem with supply, if it's something that's not commonly stocked, like maybe Digi-Key would stock, that can become quite a problem. So Silicon Labs and Digi-Key can deliver to you customized devices in very short lead times. And if you need common frequencies, we have very reliable clocks, and we add other little features. For example, there's an onboard power supply filter. There's actually an LDO voltage regulator on these, and also I2C and pin control, so you can store multiple frequencies, or you can control this, even treat it like a digitally controlled oscillator if you want. So very unique products, very, very flexible. Customization and common frequencies are stocked, and very easy to use. And if you need the really low phase noise and phase jitter, we can meet those specifications if you need that. We do have a MEMS product as well. Silicon Labs is great at solving problems in CMOS, and we've extended that into the MEMS world. So I encourage you to go to our website and explore this more, but if you're looking for a crystal replacement, but you aren't happy with the reliability or the temperature performance, we do have CMOS MEMS or CMEMS products available. And if you're wondering whether you should be using a crystal oscillator or a MEMS product, or maybe just a plain old crystal, we do have everything here. So if you're really looking for low phase jitter, then a crystal oscillator based product, whether it's Silicon Labs or someone else, is probably the right tool for the job. If you're really looking for a crystal replacement but you want to get some better reliability, or MEMS is really great if you're trying to miniaturize your product or you don't have a lot of space on your PCB. You can see you can get very small form factor parts, and those lower frequency crystal packages can get pretty big. And also if you're getting product returns on your PCB because your crystals are failing, MEMS is great for that. Clock generators, so if you need to generate if you need a lot of different clocks on your board, then these are great products for that. These are very flexible. You can get any frequency you need, and you can hang a crystal off of this. It'll generate any frequency you need, or if you have an existing clock, it'll lock to that. And you can generate any set of clocks that you need. We have products that will generate up to 10 different outputs, and each one of those can have its own output format and voltage. So each of those clock outputs would have could be 1.8 or 2.5 or 3.3 volts. They could be CMOS outputs or any of the common differential high performance voltage formats. So you program these parts, you customize them with a very simple GUI, and I'll show you an example of that here in a few minutes. And we'll burn the NVM for you with no fee and no minimum quantity. You can get those through Digi-Key, and with very short lead times, when you power up the part, it'll power up in just the configuration that you want. You can also choose to buy the I2C serial featured part, so that you could actually, on the fly or just on your own with a host, boot up the part the way you want it. But we do the pre-programming so that if this is the heartbeat of your system when you're powering things up, this clock generator will reliably power up and provide you with the reference clocks that you need. So very flexible, yet still very high performance and very easy customization with short lead times. And these get used in a lot of different types of products, in industrial, embedded, gigabit Ethernet. Great set of products here. And then the buffers, so you need a lot of copies of the same thing. Doesn't sound very exciting, but Silicon Labs launched a product line about 2 years ago. And where we're different here is that these are pin controlled. You see a little pin arrow there. We actually arranged the outputs into banks so that each of those banks can have its own divider, have its own output format, so it's very flexible. So for example, bank A of a given part number could be CMOS, and bank B could be EVBee or HCSL for like PCIe applications. So very flexible, very nice product, and it does some cool things like when you enable the part, it actually synchronizes the clocks internally so you don't get runt pulses or strange pulses. So if you have an FPGA or a communication system or a CPU that doesn't like short runt pulses and you're trying to turn something on and off, these will take care of those things for you. You even notice on the input clock side there's a mux there. If you're trying to switch between a backup clock and say a main clock, it will actually synchronize things internally before sending it along to the outputs so that you don't get those runt pulses or strange glitches on your clock. So one great thing, we call it universal. You can order one part number, and by pin control, it could be a CMOS buffer, it could be an EVBee, LVDS, PCIe. So you can minimize the number of part numbers that you have to qualify and maintain as well. So when you're going to Digi-Key, you can just order one part number, and it actually may cover a lot of different applications, or you'll be covered if there are changes in your system. And jitter attenuators. So this is a clock generator, but it features the DSPLL technology. So what it does is, if you have let's say you have a backplane clock and it has a lot of noise on it, and you really need to use that backplane clock to synchronize things, but downstream you have some receivers for these clocks that have very stringent phase noise requirements, for example. Well, often the traditional solution is other suppliers will give you some pins, and you have to design a filter externally to try to filter that out and limit the bandwidth of the PLL. Now, that can be a real pain, and it's also a way for noise to get into your system. So DSPLL is really a marketing term for a completely digital PLL that can be programmed over a serial port or through our customization GUI. So it's a very clean and easy part to use. If you have any applications that need to synchronize to a clock that may not have as low a jitter as you need, these are great products that will help clean up the clock and can send the clock onto the rest of the system and can synthesize into different frequencies. So it's both a clock generator and a clock cleaner. So we call these jitter attenuators, or we joke around like, we'll clean your clock, but you'll like it. So we do have a few new products. If you're already familiar with Silicon Labs products, then this may be news to you, because we just launched at the very end of July a new class of products that's really designed towards comms, or where you have a very complicated system that just needs a whole lot of clocks on it. So one of the problems that we're trying to solve is, everybody's downloading LOL Cats videos and Breaking Bad, and they want it on their iPhone and they want it now, and they're very impatient with that. So equipment suppliers are really under a lot of pressure to get the cost per bit down, to support a lot of different services. And this is really an example application, because there are a lot of applications out there that have similar challenges, where you really need to have very low phase jitter or just great specs, or you need a lot of clocks and a lot of flexibility. And so what happens is we see a lot of customers with clock trees, we call them, which is just a set of clocks, oscillators, and buffers, and they can be 10, 15, 20 parts on very large PCBs, and it gets very expensive, difficult to source, just a real pain. So this is the problem that we're trying to solve, and it's in this kind of market, though we see it now in everywhere: military and aero, embedded, switches, industrial automotive markets. But anyway, so on the top there, you'll see on data centers, there's probably one in your office right now, or in your apartment building, and access and aggregation, that could be in your house, or the cell phone towers you might have driven by on your way to work today. Those really need to consolidate their clock trees to get the cost down, because they can't charge a lot for these boxes. So the 5341, some of our new clock generators are great for that. And then even if you need things like 10 gigabit, there's now 100 gigabit Ethernet out there, you need really, really good solutions that can get the phase noise down to keep the bit error rate low. So some of these products hit that. And so we need to solve that problem. So we need to allow you to generate any frequency that you need. And really, all of the products I'm talking about today are good at that. Even our legacy products are great for this. So you get the flexibility, but you get really low phase jitter. And maybe you don't need really low phase noise, but it's nice to have that margin and know that you have a really good quality clock. especially if you need to make changes. Integration, really, folks just want more clock outputs, and these have up to 10 differential outputs or 20 CMOS outputs. So that really enables you to get that 10, 15, or even 5 part BOM count down to maybe just a couple of parts. So you need a lot of flexibility internally on the chip and then lots of outputs. And this all sounds great, but if you don't have great tools, I mean, you don't want to spend your day on things like figuring out your clocks. Having software and investing in that to make it very easy to use is really important so that you can configure your clocks, figure out the clock tree, and then get on with your life. So just a sneak peek as to what's happening inside of our chip. On top you see traditional solutions where there's really a clock generator and you have to design an external loop filter. So if you have to make changes, if things aren't working right in your prototype, it's a real pain because you have to solder and unsolder capacitors and resistors, and who wants to do that and open up your system to that kind of noise? So it's really all integrated on chip with lots of dividers. The multisynth is generating any frequency at 0 ppm error, and that DSPLL can be just programmed over I2C or SPI. And this is really the difference, because you can sit there and tweak this in system, and it makes it really easy to design with. You don't have to spend a lot of time on it, and if there are any changes in your prototyping, so long as you have a way to talk over I2C, you can fix it and adjust this part. And then once you get it dialed in, you can get a custom part that's going to boot up just exactly the way you want after prototyping. So really easy to use. Multisynth is kind of a marketing term for what's a fractional divider, but we call it an interpolo divider. And without getting into too much technical detail, what it's really doing is hunting always for the best clock edge where it should be. So we're really great at not messing up the clock too much when you need a weird frequency, is what it comes down to. We can find the right clock edges. We can keep the phase noise really low if that's important to you. If not, hey, you got 0 ppm error for whatever frequency you're going to type into this clock. And this is what customers really like, because they don't have to resort to having a lot of different local oscillators if they have a lot of different weird frequencies that might pop up. So it'll do the job for you, and it won't mess the clock up too much. So in a real-world application, how does that help you? Well, this is an example communication system, but this may look like your clock tree no matter what you're interested in working on these days. On the left, you see a conventional approach where you might have an FPGA, or your company's using an ASIC or a switch or something, along with CPUs, and PCIe seems to be being used everywhere, not just in PC land. And so we'll see a lot of clock trees where you see a couple of clock generators or just a slew of local oscillators. And then for things like this example, it's gigabit and 10 gigabit Ethernet communication PHYs, and those chips made by companies like, say, Broadcom, they have very, very tight phase jitter specs, and so then you end up buying, some expensive oscillators with a buffer to try to hit those specs, and just a real pain. In this case, over on the right, you see the Silicon Labs solution where there's a 10 output clock generator, and using that multisynth technology really cleans up that clock tree, because it can hit the specs of those PHYs, yet still generate all these different frequencies that are required, and really helps clean up the BOM tree. And if you have even more clocks, then maybe you just put one of our buffers there. We give you a complete end-to-end specification, bundled pricing. You can order it all through Digi-Key, and really kind of simplifies things. It saves power, it saves PCB area, saves complications with your sourcing of all the different parts. So this is a way where you really see some benefit from the flexibility and more outputs. So talked about some of our higher end products with a lot of outputs, but we have something for every job. Whether you need 10 outputs, or you're doing high end communications, or you just need a few outputs and you're not too worried about phase jitter and all of that, and you just want to get a lower price, or you want to replace a bunch of crystals. The 5350 is a CMOS clock, which has a lot of flexibility in it, still has the customization, and you can really clean up a lot of those crystals that might be on your board. And we also have a whole family of PCIe clocks, so if you're doing that, we have the right tool for the job. So if you ever have any questions, contact Digi-Key, contact Silicon Labs, and we can get you into the right product. We have something for everything, so if you're watching this 5341 and saying, hey, that sounds like way overkill for me, we have a lot of products that hit the consumer market as well. So a little bit about the tools. Silicon Labs knows that if we don't make it easy for you, it's going to take up too much of your time, and hey, you might not buy our stuff. So we spend a lot of time and money trying to give you great tools to both A, find the right products that you need, and B, to be able to design a clock tree or just to customize your parts. So we do have a new page, scilabs.com, timing-tools. But if you go to scilabs.com, it's really easy to find our products. We sell microcontrollers and isolation products, all kinds of stuff. And we have a timing home. And so in clocks and oscillators, you'll find parametric search. It's kind of like searching for a flight on Kayak or something. I mean, you just type in what you need, what kind of specs you're looking for, how many outputs, and it'll get you to the right part. And then if you want to customize a solution, it'll tell you how to go on and do that. If you're using an existing part, maybe it's been discontinued, or I don't know, maybe you don't like the price, who knows what. You know, Digi-Key has a lot of great resources, and we also have a cross-reference here where you can just type in a part number and see if we have something that's pin compatible or is similar to what you're using. The product selector guide is kind of a nice tool just to look to see what kind of overview of products we have. It's actually interactive. You can click around the PDF. And Clocktree Expert, we just announced that. And that actually, if you don't know where to start and you have a laundry list of clocks you need to cover on your board, I'm going to show you a quick demo of that, which really helps you out. And on the same page, if you were to keep scrolling down, you'll find all of our GUIs and our online web utilities that you can use to configure and customize parts. So I encourage you to go to that URL and take a look at all the tools. It's a great place to start when you don't know where to look. So Clocktree Expert, I just have a couple more slides here, but I'm going to talk a little bit about Clocktree Expert, which is a great way to type in a laundry list of frequencies and clocks that you might need, and then to get a clock tree recommendation, which then takes you to a parametric search to then pick out the right parts. And you can actually save these designs here. You could create a BOM that you could then send to Digi-Key to order samples. A great, easy-to-use tool. You know, if you are a clock expert, you know, maybe you want to go off on your own. It does have a do-it-yourself option as well, and I'll show you that here in just a second. But if you take a look at that URL, then you can try it yourself while I'm doing that. And just a note about once you've designed your clock tree and you've picked out the parts that you want, we are investing a lot in web tools and GUIs so that you can pick out your part, get it configured, and get custom samples really quickly and easily. It's pretty amazing how complicated a clock can be internally once you start digging through it, and we try to hide all that complexity from you. And I'll show you a quick tour of Clock Builder Pro as an example of that. And gosh, we even have an iOS app, and we're going to have an Android one soon. Our software folks are working on that. But if you're bored with my presentation, you have an iPhone. You can go ahead and download at the iOS at the Apple Store. Take a look at Silicon Labs. We have some GUIs there, and there's Clock Builder Go, and you can actually say, hey, can this clock do the job for me, and type in frequencies and whatnot, and then you can send that to yourself. Anyway. And of course, we always have EVBees. We try to make it just seamless. So when you do see a GUI or a tool, it's going to bolt up to our EVBees very easily. So if you've ordered an EVBee from Digi-Key, you have that on your desk, you download our GUI, it should be a seamless, easy experience. And as you can see, we always make it very easy. For example, that EVBee there for a clock generator has lots of connectors on there. You'll interface over USB, load up your clock profile, and then you can measure the performance and compare that to our datasheet. And even things like our simple products, like a MEMS oscillator. If you want to check out our parts and you want to see, well, maybe I'm curious about this MEMS, and hey, they have a footprint compatible part. You can talk to Digi-Key, or you can look at standard stock frequencies, or get one of our field programmer boards. Comes with samples. You drop it in. You go to the GUI, tell us what you want, creates your part number for you, and then you can actually burn a part right at your desk, and you can solder it right into a footprint where you might already have an oscillator and check it out. So whether it's a more complicated clock generator with lots of outputs and lots of options, or it's a simple oscillator, you're going to find our customization and our tools make it very easy to program and evaluate so that you don't have to spend a lot of time on it, and then you can get samples on your desk really quickly and move on with your design. So since this is a Google Hangout and this is my first one, they said I could do crazy stuff like live demos. I'll restore my session here. So this is our Clocktree Expert, and what I did was I did load something up just to save time. I know folks are pretty busy, but if you go to our Clocktree Expert, it's going to take you to this window here, and we try to make it very easy. Some folks will come to us and say, hey, I want to replace a clock or an oscillator. Usually our first question is, why don't you give me a list of all of your clocks and what you got to take care of on your board, because we may be able to simplify things for you. And here this looks pretty complicated. We have some Ethernet stuff here, an FPGA, CPUs, and they're driving a couple of USB PHYs maybe. They got PCI on the board, and then so we're putting in here. You can name these if you want. Type in the frequencies, how many copies, and formats, and then generate a clock tree. And I've already done that. So what it'll do is it'll pop up a clock tree for you. And I've already assigned part numbers, but this will give you kind of a starting point. And what it's trying to do is it's trying to design a clock tree that's as simple as possible with the fewest number of parts. Now I could try to sell you a whole lot of parts maybe to do the same job, but part of our value we're trying to bring to you is to simplify things for you, and that's what customers want today. But when they do come up, let's say I thought, I forgot I needed a 25 megahertz clock of some kind out here. And then when you double click that part, then it pulls up a parametric search that makes it very easy for you to find a part that you might need. You can filter based on different parameters, kind of like a parametric search, the kind of output formats and whatnot, and I'll make it easy and I'll pick something here, and then it will assign a frequency. Now it reminds you, once you've assigned and turned all of these amber blocks into green and you have your clock tree, you can create a BOM or a report. You can do that up here as well. So if I want to take a look at a report, because the reports are pretty cool, what you can do is you can actually save these designs and you can email them. You can download a PDF for your records. You can email it to your parents and you're like, hey, look at this cool clock tree and how smart I am. But it has all your requirements in here, has a BOM in here, which is kind of handy, and you can always go back and change things if you want. Another thing that you can do here is if you're like, you know what, I just want a spreadsheet, I don't want to have these cool reports, then you have a BOM here, and if there's customization options, sample by, that's all right here. But let's say, you know what, I don't want to bother with this stuff, I want to send it to my friends at Digi-Key, and you can actually download a copy of an Excel spreadsheet and then send that to your parents and then copy Digi-Key and then get some samples for yourself. So we try to make it very easy, and you can do all of this without actually telling us who you are. I mean, you can play with this tool, do whatever you want, but we do encourage you to go ahead and get a Scilabs account, because that'll help you get updates on documentation and whatnot. We're not going to send 20 sales guys to your doorstep, but if we need to email you reports and whatnot, or if you want to be able to save designs and open them and share them later, you can do that. So long as you register with an email address, you can then open, save, and share and do some other things with Clocktree Expert and make this really your timing home. So hopefully that'll be a useful tool for folks when you just don't really know where to start. And by the way, if you're already an expert, you're like, I don't want any help, you can click here if you're starting a new design, and here it's actually going to open up what I already had, but you can actually kind of design your own stuff and wire it up yourself. And so once you've defined these, you can wire up blocks and kind of do it yourself if you want. If you just want a place to, rather than scratching it on the back of a napkin, and you want to save this here for later or share it with folks or create a BOM, you can do it yourself as well. So one last tool is this is Clock Builder Pro, and this is an example of some of the new tools that we're trying to bring to you to help you get along with trying to customize clocks that can get very complicated. Whether it's a simple and easy product, you want it to be very easy to use. So I've loaded up here actually an example design. Wire it up yourself, and so once you've designed, getting a little audio feedback. Really this takes you step by step, and you're going to find that our tools are very easy to use in this respect, and that you define your inputs, your outputs. This is a more complicated product, but we have some really simple stuff as well. But say, hey, I want to use a crystal, I want to have some backup input clocks, and it'll show you block diagrams and whatnot to show you the part of the clock that you're actually configuring without having to have the datasheet open up next to you. And You know, these are pretty cool. If I can add mathematical expressions, we try to make this easy. Let's say I don't know how many bits to put in this divider or whatnot, but I know I want 100 divided by 3. You can add mathematical expressions. I can say, hey, you know what? I want this clock to be 1/2 of the output number 0 clock, and it'll figure that out for you. And if you're doing crazy stuff, it'll say, oh, you did an error. You did something crazy here. But anyway, but let's see. So setting formats, it'll take care of those things for you. And when you get to the end, you can actually bolt this up to your EVBee. So if there was an EVBee plugged into my laptop right now, it would say, oh, we see an EVBee. Do you want to load that? And if you want to create a datasheet addendum or you want to create a custom part number, that can all be done online. So just to give you an example here, so if I were talking about the output frequencies and I didn't generate something too crazy here, let's say I had 1 megahertz here. It says, okay, hey, you put something nutty in there. It says, hey, your frequency plan is valid. It gives you a little report here as to why you might have warnings or whether it's good or not. Gives you a power and estimation and whatnot. And let's see. So if I go to finish and I want to create a custom part number, if I've signed into scilabs.com, which I have because I work here, then I can create a part number. So I say, all right, and it'll say, all right, you know what, based on what you're doing, the cheapest part you should use here, because of course I used a very complicated plan, is grade A. It'll tell you what part number to use, and it'll create a part number for me. And what we'll do is it will create a datasheet addendum, which is a PDF with your custom part number on there, and there's no cost for it. It's all automated. And what you'll do is you can actually order samples. There's no minimum quantity. There's no fee for it, and you'll get a datasheet addendum that you can staple to the main datasheet, and you have that for your records and knowing that you have that. And I'm going to open up my email just to show you that, hey, you're going to get a cool datasheet addendum here in a second. So that's running. So pull this back up. And so yeah, just an example of some of the tools that we offer at Silicon Labs. You'll find that you'll have similar tools like that. Just whether you don't know where to start, Clocktree Expert can help you there in finding the right parts. Whether you just use our parametric search to find the right parts that you need to order samples. Hey, I don't need anything customized. That's great. No problem with that because really, companies like Digi-Key stock common standard frequencies for oscillators and whatnot as well, so we don't overcomplicate things. Anyway, so that's it for my presentation. I don't want to kill everybody with slides and demos. I'm happy to take questions if anybody has questions right now. So Nick, any questions come in from the field from anybody?
As of right now, haven't got any questions coming in from Twitter.
Okay. There's some common questions that we do get. I can cover a couple of those, and maybe that'll spark any other ones. And by the way, feel free to send in questions later if you couldn't think of any now. So one, I talked about the difference between clocks and oscillators, but some folks say, well, hey, I'm just using a lot of crystals, so should I be interested in your parts at all? We have a lot of customers that are very interested in replacing having a lot of crystals on their board. I had an automotive quality expert once tell me that often there's a 20-cent crystal out there that causes thousands of dollars in returns. So really frustrating for some folks to have a lot of crystals on the board because it's the worst point of failure. Though we're used to using them, we've used them for many, many years. So often what we'll do is we will sell to customers like that CMOS oscillators or MEMS products that help reduce that risk by getting rid of crystals and getting them off the board. And because sometimes, as my grandmother used to say, sometimes cheap is expensive. And so having a lot of crystals on your board can be expensive, both in design time, finding quality suppliers, taking up PCB space and in product returns or just in production failures. So we do have products that are priced in that range, and we have a lot of customers that come to us that would be someone that would just be using a lot of crystals on their board. So that's another thing. Customization, they like to ask, hey, you guys really have less than 2-week lead times? If I want to make a change, am I really stuck? Well, you have two paths. One, yes, our lead times are very short. And if it's something standard stock at Digi-Key, when they have some of our programming services as well, you can get stuff really fast. So it really is less than 2 weeks, worst case, shorter than a production lead time, for example. There really is no minimum quantity. There really is no fee. I get an email when someone customizes or they order something. So it's really all automated. The other thing is that a lot of our products, even our oscillators, let's say you buy an oscillator from Digi-Key and you change your mind and you're just in the lab, a lot of those products have I2C on them, so you can overwrite whatever has been burned into NVM, and so you can actually change the product on the fly if you want, even if it's just in a lab environment. Or if you have a microcontroller or a DSP or something on your board, you can act as a host and boot these up if you want as well. So there are a lot of different options. It seems that a lot of different requirements come in for customers while they're in the design process, or one of their other suppliers change the clock requirements on them. So we can really help you out there. Really short lead times, serial interface so you can customize things on the fly if you want, and a lot of standard stocked common frequencies at Digi-Key and like that. So that's something I get asked quite a bit on the Clocktree Expert. Maybe you'll see a Clocktree recommendation, but you say, you know what, I really would like to, have some local oscillators and do something a little bit different. Well, then I encourage you to take a look at the do-it-yourself option, or contact Digi-Key and Silicon Labs. We actually have an entry form where if you don't want to use the Clocktree Expert, you can email us, contact us, call Digi-Key, or we do have on our website a place that you can type in your list of frequencies and your specifications, and within 48 hours, it really happens usually within 1 day, we'll send you back 1 or 2 Clocktree recommendations, because there are a lot of different ways to solve that problem. It's always like a puzzle. So if you have a complicated clocking situation, or you just have a long laundry list of that, you don't want to use Clocktree Expert, you can contact us as well, and we'll help you out with that. And the third question I get is on a lot of these products where there are a lot of, if you buy a clock generator, and I said, hey, this guy on the Google Hangout said I could replace a lot of clocks with just a single chip, kind of a clock tree on a chip. And somebody would say, well, that's great, but now I have to run these PCB traces all over, and these clocks are going to get messed up. That seems like a pain. Well, with very, very simple routing rules, and we have application notes on this and apps folks that can help you out, it's really not a problem. If you use just standard techniques, and especially if you have a differential clock, so if you have a really high quality clock that you need to not mess up, it's almost always a differential voltage format. And so if you keep those traces close together and you route them to whatever is receiving the clock, it'll reject a lot of noise. And we have folks with very, very, very large PCBs in communications industry, military, aero, that have very large PCBs that do use extended clock trees where they fan out a lot of clocks from just a couple of clock chips, and it works very well. But there are some standard practices, and we do offer a free layout service review. So if you want us to take a look at the clocking portion of your schematic, and you want us to take a look at your layout, we're more than happy to do that. You can send that to us or send it to Digi-Key, and it'll get to us, and we'll help you out with that. But just know that to stay competitive and to get the cost per bit down, or to get the cost of your clocking down, it is a very viable route. All right. Well, that ends my presentation. If there are any questions that we have now or that may come in later, I'll be happy to answer those. For those of you that have called in or are watching, I really appreciate your time. I know everyone's busy, so hopefully this was short and sweet enough and useful for you. I do encourage you to go to scilabs.com/timing, or take a look at our products at Digi-Key's website at digikey.com. If you see something you like, order some samples or send us some questions. Don't spend too much time on it. We're here to help you, and we hopefully will make your life easier and save you some money and complication in your application, no matter what you guys are designing.
All right, yeah, and on behalf of Digi-Key, really want to thank you, Len, for joining today. Great information on your timing solutions, and once again, like Len mentioned, either go to siliconlabs.com or digikey.com or get a hold of either one of us, and we should be able to help you with any of your future timing issues or solutions.